Hey, one of the most common questions I see in my practice is, hey, I saw, so and so online for blood sugar. Is this what I should be doing? And everything starts to feel so very complicated when you're thinking about 150 different Instagram hacks. You feel like you're missing something. And I want to be honest with you. We are going to talk today about sleep, stress, movement, and food. None of it is going to be earth shattering in a global lens view. But what will be very different is how much these things matter and the order they matter in. Because most people I work with struggle not because they don't know enough. They struggle because they don't know where to put their energy first. So, hi, I'm Dr. Melanie Deschatelet. I am a licensed naturopathic doctor in British Columbia, and I am slightly obsessed with things cycle health, metabolic health, and PCOS. And so, the types of questions I like to ask when I'm looking at research is not, hey, is doing this thing going to help at all? No, we need to know things in context. How much does this help? What is the magnitude that this is going to help? What outcomes is this going to help? Is this just going to help a single meal? Or do we know that we're changing metabolic health long term? Are these studies done in real humans? Because usually the unlock is not more information, it's better prioritization, understanding your constraint, and choosing a focus for your first move. So I want you to think about this like going to a racetrack. If you're going to invest your most valuable asset, your time, your energy, your capacity, your consistency, you don't want to spread that across every horse. You want to know which horse gives you the best odds first. And here's the reality. Most of us don't have unlimited capacity. Often, one area acts like a keystone. For some people, when they start moving more consistently, they start to eat better without even thinking about it or without forcing it. For others, they sleep better, think about recovery, and that unlocks their capacity to make healthier choices. I want you to give yourself space to self-reflect because the truth is constraints are very individual. And so if you can identify kind of one area that in the past has unlocked other areas, that's probably going to be your best first move. So let's start by talking about there is no universal starting point, but there is a best first move for you. So let's start with foundational levers. Let's start with number one, which is sleep. Sleep, I think, is one of the most underestimated levers for blood sugar. In research, sleep isn't just measured by hours, it's also assessed by using a validated self-report tool like Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, which looks at both sleep quantity and sleep quality. When we look at sleep quality and blood sugar balance, we see a U-shaped curve. Consistently short sleep, usually 6 hours or under, worsens insulin sensitivity. And very long sleep is also associated with higher metabolic risk. For most adults, the lowest metabolic risk sits at about 7 to 8 hours of good quality sleep. Even short periods of poor sleep can measurably worsen blood sugar regulation. Some studies were as short as 1 week, and then we were seeing changes in blood. So sleep quality isn't just a feeling. And we see this also in the sleep apnea research. And so if you snore a lot, if your partner says you snore a lot or gasp for air and you wake up really unrefreshed, really loop in your healthcare provider and have that assessed because it might be impacting your metabolic health. Inside my Shift Society community, I share an optional educational bonus with links to all of the links all the validated self questionnaires that I'm talking about so that you actually are able to self reflect on how these foundational areas are commonly measured in metabolic research. And you can consider whether you might want to focus your attention on it or bring it up with your healthcare team. These tools aren't diagnostic, so they're not a substitute for medical care, but they can be super helpful for self reflection and informed conversations. So let's talk about lever number 2, stress and recovery. This is where language really matters. The goal is not no stress. The goal is enough recovery. In research, stress is often assessed using validated self questionnaires like the perceived stress scale, which doesn't ask how much stress you have. It asks whether life feels manageable and whether you feel able to cope. From a blood sugar perspective, when you are under chronic stress and don't have periods of recovery, your nervous system is really geared toward the sympathetic state or the stress response. And a whole bunch of things automatically happen when we're in that state. Our body was designed to try to survive a physical threat. So think about that. That's how we're wired. Imagine you were being chased by a bear. Your body thinks that your life is in danger. And so, what it's going to do to increase your odds of you surviving this bear attack, it's going to release sugar that your body is storing so that your muscles and brain have the sugar it needs to think and run faster to survive. The issue is, in today's world, our threats aren't often physical. They are in a different realm, and we can hang out there a little longer than necessary. So, if stress is chronic and we just don't have those recovery periods so that we can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, glucose is kept readily available regardless of what you eat. And so that's how stress can impact blood sugar and impact blood sugar regulation. Foundational lever number 3, movement. So this is one of the areas where we actually have very clear targets across guidelines for insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and PCOS care. We consistently see benefits when people are doing 150 to 250 minutes minimum per week of moderate intensity aerobic exercise. So what does that include? That's walking, cycling, dancing. It needs to be at a 6 out of 10 intensity. Think at minimum, you could still talk to a friend, but you couldn't sing. Plus 2 to 3 sessions a week of resistance training. So here's the analogy I like to use. Your muscles are like sponges. Regular movement, like I've just described, changes the quality and the size of your sponge. They become better, they become bigger, they become more effective, and better at handling glucose all the time. So your baseline improves. Now, you might have also heard that walking after meals can help activate the sponge for that meal, which is great, but it's not the same thing as changing the sponge itself. So, if your after meal walking is contributing to that 150 to 250 minute a week, fantastic. But moving after meals is not instead of the overall target of 150 to 250 minutes. It can be part of it, but it can't replace it. And so the reason I like to say that is that I would say at the most foundation, the goal is 150 to 250 minutes plus the two to 3 resistance training at any time of day. Bonus, if some of that happens after meals, it's going to improve how your body handled the sugar of that meal specifically. Sometimes when we start to put too many barriers, it makes it more difficult for someone to get the baseline amount of exercise. So priority one is just get it in. If for you, first thing in the morning works for you, do that. If you're able to get some of them after meals, bonus, but that's a secondary, not primary. Foundational lever number 4, eating pattern and fuel. So, from a blood sugar perspective, fueling isn't about restriction. And when I say fueling, I mean fueling with food isn't about restriction, it's about matching your body's needs over time. And I have another video that I'm going to cue in about mindful eating because it's about reconnecting to being in the present moment when you're eating so that you are more capable of hearing your cues. And so having well matched cues is going to help blood sugar regulation over time because when we over fuel chronically, that is going to push into that's going to push forward insulin resistance because our body is going to have to store that overfueling in our body. And the second part that I want to focus on is eating pattern. What has been super consistent in the research are different dietary patterns. I'm going to name them for completeness, but honestly, there's more that overlaps. They are all saying mostly the same things with little tweaks. But the Mediterranean diet, the portfolio diet, and the DASH diet have been really heavily studied and have all been shown to help with blood sugar regulation. For simplicity, choose one of the three, the one that speaks to you the most, and nudge your diet in that direction. The things that keep showing up consistently in those three dietary patterns is a focus on more whole grain, high fiber foods. It's a focus on lots of fruits and vegetables. It's a focus on more leaner types of protein. And it's a focus on less ultra processed foods. They're dietary patterns that help support reaching your fiber goals and getting enough protein. So, one thing I want to say clearly, so once you understand the hierarchy, you stop asking, does this work? And start asking, like, where does this belong? And these levers that I talk about, most of us aren't doing them as consistently as we could, and there's room for improvement there. And your efforts will be rewarded exponentially here because these things aren't a single study that showed that after the meal, the glycemic load was slightly better. It's not a blood sugar hack. Everything that I've talked about is at minimum a 2-for-1 deal. Good for blood sugar, but also been studied in other areas and shown to help your life in other areas too. So that is why they deserve your attention first. So this isn't about doing everything. It's about doing things in the right priority. Enough sleep, enough recovery, enough fueling and healthy patterned eating, and enough movement. If you want to get access to my YouTube bonus, which is the Metabolic Impact Matrix, then join inside PCOS Shift Society. The link is in the bio, and you can grab it there as well as this awesome community. Have a great day.